After studying at Germany's Stuttgart Polytechnic Institute, Gottlieb Daimler worked around the clock in various German engineering companies. He most notably was employed under a firm owned by Nicholas A. Otto as their technical director. So what does an engineer in Germany have to do with America? He created the first car in 1884, named after his daughter Mercedes. Nearly simultaneously, another German, Karl Benz, designed his own version of a car completely independently. These two unknowingly created an industry that would grow exponentially. This is the story of America and the car. How can one contextualize the physical effects of the car? Well, we can start where the people were. The nation's city's conditions are simple enough to view fully within the context of a purely physical standpoint. In a short summary, industrial expansion and population growth radically changed the levels of noise, traffic jams, the number of slums, and percent of air pollution, resulting in sanitation and health problems becoming commonplace. Local systems for mass transit, in the form of trolleys, cable cars, and subways, were built, while skylines began to dominate city skylines. New York City addressed these factors in 1916 with the first zoning ordinance, which was appropriately called the 1916 Zoning Resolution. Zoning was treated as a means of organizing specific land uses in a city to avoid potentially harmful adjacencies like heavy manufacturing and residential districts, which were common in large urban areas in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Zoning code also determines the permitted residential building types and densities in specific areas of a city by defining such things as single-family houses and multifamily residential properties as being allowed or not in certain areas. The overall effect of zoning in the last century has been the creation of different types of areas around the city that otherwise had similar land use patterns, which had previously been a mix of heterogeneous residential and business uses. A particularly severe problem regarding the zoning of places right outside of cities sprouted after World War II. In suburban areas located on the periphery of the city, strict zoning codes almost exclusively allowed for single-family detached housing. These strict zoning codes resulted in heavy segregation for built environments, both socially, economically, and physically, between residential and commercial land usage. This became a positive feedback loop that contributed to an uptick in car dependency by making it nearly impossible to access all one's given needs, such as housing, work, school, and recreation, without the use of a car. Car dependency was by far the biggest objective in the United States' national interests after the Second World War. Automobiles had become much more available following the moratorium on production during the Second World War, when factories produced jeeps and other military transport vehicles instead of cars. When urban infrastructure began to be built exclusively around the car, the resulting economic and built environment restructuring allowed wide adoption of automobile usage. In the United States, the expansive manufacturing infrastructure and increasing consumerism set forth the conditions for car dependency in communities. With Detroit turning out automobiles as fast as possible, city dwellers gave up cramped apartments for a suburban lifestyle centered around children and housewives, with the male breadwinner commuting to work. These factors created the base for reimagination of the old frontier. The Federal Highway Act of 1956, also known as the National Interstate and Defense Highways Act, was enacted on June 29, 1956, when President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed the bill into law. With an original authorization of $25 billion for the construction of the 41,000 miles of the interstate highway system over a 10-year period, it was the largest public works project in American history through that time. The addition of the term defense in the Act's title was because some of the original cost was diverted from defense funds and because of the interstate highway system's primary importance to the national defense. The money from the interstate highway was handled in a highway trust fund that paid for 90% of highway construction costs, with the state required to pay the remaining 10%. It was expected that the money, the 10%, would be generated through new taxes on automobiles, trucks, and tires. As an example of this practice, the federal portion of the cost, the 90%, was paid for by taxes on gasoline and diesel fuel. When the government provided this impressive update to interstate connection, people were influenced in many ways to support them. One major fascination with American citizens was the idea of true physical freedom, being able to go wherever you please. Having a transcontinental road system would allow for unprecedented amounts of individual travel while also decreasing travel times for long distances. According to Dictionary.com, suburbanization is the establishment of residential communities on the outskirts of a city. Its dwellers typically work in the cities but raise their families in a, quote, less congested, safer, and more relaxed atmosphere, unquote. Especially in the United States, suburbanization is often associated with the sprawl of population. By 1960, Suburbia encompassed one-third of the nation's population. The growth of suburbs was not only a result of post-war prosperity, but innovations of the single-family housing market with low interest rates on 28 and 30-year mortgages and low down payments, especially for veterans. Suburbs provided larger homes for larger families, security from urban living, privacy, and space for consumer goods. Growth of the suburbs was especially prominent in the Sun Belt regions of the country. By definition, the Sun Belt is a region of the United States generally considered stretching across the southwest and southeast, or the area south of the 36th parallel. According to the University of Central Florida, the region saw a boom in population as citizens were attracted to new economic opportunities tied to military bases and industrial, agricultural, and commercial development to the region. New technologies such as air conditioning made the warmer climate more bearable, and the passage of federal civil rights and voting rights legislation made the social and political climate more welcoming as well. Going hand in hand with suburban development was the rise of shopping malls, fast food restaurants, and coffee shops. In 2005, the U.S. Census Bureau projected that approximately 88% of the nation's population growth between 2000 and 2030 would occur in the Sun Belt. California, Texas, and Florida were expected to add more than 12 million people during that time, which would make them by far the most populous states in America. Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, Georgia, Florida, and Texas were expected to be the fastest-growing states as well. Although the pace of growth has slowed in recent years, the Sun Belt remains the fastest-growing region of the United States today. In the suburban system, most trips from one place to another require that cars enter a collector road, no matter how short or long the distance is. This is compounded by the hierarchy of streets, where entire neighborhoods and subdivisions are dependent on one or two collector roads. Because all traffic is forced onto these roads, they are often heavy with traffic all day. It has been noted that if a traffic crash occurs on a collector road, or if road construction inhibits the flow, then the entire road system may be rendered useless until the blockage is cleared. The traditional grid of old American cities, in contrast, allowed for a larger number of choices in alternative routes. Suburban systems of the sprawl type are also quite inefficient for cyclists or pedestrians, as the direct route is usually not available to them either. Improved sprawl systems, through retaining the car detours, possess cycle paths and footpaths connecting across the arms of the sprawl system, allowing a more direct route while still keeping the cars out of the residential and side streets. Suburbs are characterized by lower densities than central cities, dominated by single-family homes on small plots of land anywhere from 0.1 acres and up, surrounded at close quarters by very similar dwellings. Zoning patterns that separate residential and commercial development, as well as different intensities and densities of development. Daily needs are not within walking distance of most homes. subdivisions carved from previously rural land into multiple home developments built by a single real estate company. Shopping malls and strip malls behind large parking lots instead of a classic downtown shopping district. A road network designed to conform to a hierarchy, including cul-de-sacs leading to larger residential streets, in turn leading to large collector roads in place of the grid pattern common to most central cities in pre-World War II suburbs. A greater percentage of one-story administrative buildings than in rural areas. Compared to rural areas, suburbs usually have a greater population density, higher standards of living, more complex road systems, more franchise stores and restaurants, and less farmland and wildlife.
No,
It's the
it's the sophomores.
I know, but who's in the class with that now?
Simon.